Good afternoon, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us in this powerful educational Lunch and Learn. Right here, this is your host, Patricia Houston, and I want to remind everybody that this Lunch and Learn is brought to you by Family Partners of Morris and Sussex counties. Here also, I have the honor of having Susan Gleason. Susan, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Susan is from the Partnership for Change, and today Susan is going to be discussing a really important topic, which is in relation to dating abuse in teenagers. Susan, before we jump into the topic, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. As Patricia mentioned, my name is Susan Gleason. I'm a training specialist for a Partnership for Change. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending intimate partner violence through training, education, and prevention programs. Before I started working with the Partnership for Change, I was an assistant prosecutor in the Union County Prosecutor's Office for 25 years. I retired, it'll be 3 years in April, and I actually knew Gloria and Allison, who are our co-founders of a Partnership for Change, when I was working in our domestic violence unit. I supervised our unit, and I worked with them on a number of domestic violence trainings. So when I retired, they asked me to start working with them, and I was happy to do so because it's certainly a topic that I'm passionate about. I worked in a lot of different units in the prosecutor's office, everything from narcotics cases, child abuse cases, homicide cases, and worked with victims of domestic violence throughout my career. So that's just a little bit about me. Also, I will mention that I worked as a supervisor of our juvenile unit for many years. So I was very familiar and worked with the family support organization that we had in Union County. So I'm familiar with the work that you do, the families that you work with, and it's just a tremendous service that you do for the community and the families that you work with. So hopefully this presentation today will be helpful to you in what you do in working with families.
Wonderful, and thank you very much. And on behalf of Family Partners in our community, I want to thank you for being here and the whole process in scheduling this presentation. So thank you for all of that. I want to remind everybody that this presentation is being recorded and you can find the video in the Family Partners YouTube channel. All that information is going to be there. Also, in relation to contact information, website, all of that is going to be in the description box of the video. With that, we're going to move to your presentation. You're more than welcome to take the lead.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right, so as I mentioned, I work for a Partnership for Change. I told you a little bit about our organization already. That's our website. So if you have, I'm going to talk to you about our website because there's some great information about teen dating abuse on there, which I want you to look at when you get a chance. And that's our website and our email if you have any kind of general questions. We have a lot of different programs at a Partnership for Change. We have a program for teens specifically, which is called our Power Back program. And that's where we go into schools and we talk to teenagers, usually juniors and seniors in high school, about healthy dating relationships and what that looks like, and also about teen dating abuse and how to respond if they find themselves in an abusive relationship or if one of their friends is in an abusive relationship. And we develop peer leaders within the school. So these are students who volunteer to become leaders who can help spread awareness throughout the school, as well as helping other students by referring them to resources and an adult that can help them get out of a situation. So we also do awareness events throughout the school year. For example, February is Teen Dating Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. So we do awareness events within the school. So as part of our Power Back program, we do a lot of surveys of teens. So we have surveyed over 20,000 students over the course of this program. Our program has been around for a long time. A Partnership for Change has been around since 2007, I should mention. So a lot of the information that I'm going to give you today is directly from students themselves, talking about issues that have come up, their concerns, what they're seeing on campus, and things like that. So when we talk about some just kind of general facts, I will tell you that unfortunately teen dating abuse is on the rise. So about 1 in 3 teen girls reports being having had some type of abuse in their relationships, and 1 in 17 boys. So it's unfortunately really prevalent, and the numbers keep getting worse, unfortunately, instead of getting better. As a matter of fact, you can see some of the statistics up here right now. But I will tell you, this particular year, we were in 2 schools in Union County. Roselle, 85% of 12th grade girls reported having had at least one type of abuse in a relationship. That's 85%. And in Elizabeth, we did the same survey of 10th grade girls, and 75% of 10th grade girls reported having suffered some type of abuse in a relationship. So it's really important that we get this information to teens and talk to them about what a healthy relationship looks like. You know, we talk to teens all the time about safe sex and about drugs and alcohol and drinking and driving, and spend so much time helping them learn how to drive a car. But we rarely ever talk to them about what a healthy relationship looks like. So that's what I want to impress upon you today, is really just having these conversations and knowing the facts and knowing the resources that are out there. The other thing that we learned from students is that students are going to go to a friend first. If they're experiencing abuse in a relationship, they're not going to go to their parents and talk about it. They're not going to go to somebody at school to talk about it. They're going to go to their friends. And unfortunately, you know, what do their friends know? You know, unfortunately, they're getting some bad advice from friends as well. So what we also learned when we surveyed staff members at a school, only 11% of staff members felt equipped to deal with them if a student reported to them that they were being abused in a relationship or had been exposed to domestic violence in the home. And I'm sure that you work with a lot of families that have issues of domestic abuse in the home. So we knew that we also had to go out and train staff members. So we have a different program where we go out and train school counselors, student assistance counselors, health teachers, anybody who might be teaching about healthy relationships, as well as anybody a student might report to. So let's talk about some background on this issue. You know, when young people reach out for help, adults may not take this problem seriously, unfortunately, because, you know, we kind of look at it as, oh, you know, they're dating, it might be their first relationship. It's not like they can't break up anytime. And so unfortunately, you know, we tend to minimize these relationships when what we know is for teens, for young people, their relationship is the most important thing that's going on in their lives. It's more important than their friends, more important than school or sports or family. It is the most important thing that's going on in our lives. And so we have to treat it seriously as well. So if somebody were to reach out to you for help, we have to make sure that we take the problem seriously and really, really take the time to listen. We also know that there's underreporting among teens. When it comes to the issue of domestic violence, we know that there's widespread underreporting among a lot of different groups: men, women, people in the LGBTQ plus population, people who are undocumented. But teens are especially vulnerable to this issue because, first of all, they don't necessarily recognize it in their own relationships. They don't understand that it's abuse. But also they don't know who to respond to or who to report to. You know, they're afraid to tell their parents because they're afraid that they did something wrong or it's their fault that they got themselves into this situation. They're afraid of telling a school teacher or somebody in school because they're afraid of getting in trouble, or they're afraid of getting somebody else in trouble. And we know they're certainly not going to end up picking up the phone and calling the police. So there's a lot of underreporting. So even those numbers that I gave you, they're probably not 100% accurate because of the underreporting. Because teenagers, you know, they don't have the same mobility as adults. You know, they're certainly not going to get themselves to a police department or lead domestic violence agency. They don't believe they have any resources to turn to. So that's what we're going to talk about today is the resources that are out there. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the issue of domestic violence, you know, or intimate partner violence, domestic abuse, whatever you want to refer to it as, is, you know, unfortunately, you know, there are some victim blaming questions that are asked, you know, like, what did the victim do to deserve it? You know, and teens, especially since it's their first relationship, you know, they don't understand that, you know, what's normal and what's healthy. So they think like, isn't it okay or normal for couples to fight? Isn't the violence just an expression of how passionate they feel about the relationship and about their partner? A lot of people will ask, why doesn't the victim just leave? And this is one of the most damaging questions that we can ask a victim. I mean, especially when it comes to adults, but when it comes to teens as well, because, when we think about adults who find themselves in abusive relationships, it's more complicated. Maybe they're married, there's commingled expenses, they share housing, they have children together. So it's a much more complicated issue, which I think we can kind of understand. But when it comes to dating abuse, just like, oh, well, they're young, break up, there's plenty of fish out there, like, what's the big deal? But it is a big deal to them. So we never want to ask the question of why they just don't break up or leave. And a lot of people this is a very shameful thing for them and for teens. They feel like it's nobody's business, that this is something that is private. So we know there's a lot of misunderstanding of this issue. And schools do have a responsibility to keep kids safe on campus. So we really impress upon school staff members to understand this issue. Okay. So what is dating abuse? And this definition that I'm going to give you now applies whether we're talking about adults or teens. But dating abuse is a pattern of behavior where one person in an intimate relationship does everything they can do to gain and maintain power and control over their partner by instilling fear of negative consequences. So it's that pattern of behavior. It's not about having a fight once in a while or being in a bad mood. I mean, all couples fight, whether you're a teen or an adult. Hopefully you fight in a way that's healthy and productive and not unhealthy. But it's a pattern of behavior, and it's about power and control. It is not about anger. It's not about somebody having a bad temper. It's about where one person feels the need to have power and control over their partner. And they do this by using intimidation tactics, by manipulating the victim and putting them in fear. And that fear can be of any negative consequence. The fear doesn't have to be that I fear that my partner is going to hit me or my partner is going to kill me. It can be fear of anything. It can be fear of, I'm going to get screamed at. I'm going to be called names. I'm going to be accused of cheating on him. I'm going to be given the silent treatment. He's going to withhold affection. It can be all these types of things, any negative consequence. So what we tell girls and boys is that if you can't go where you want to go, do what you want to do, be friends who you want to be friends with, wear what you want to wear, then you are likely in an abusive relationship. If you change who you are to satisfy a partner because you're in fear of what consequences there will be if you don't conform to what they want, then that's an abusive relationship. And abusive relationships are rarely, if ever, physically abusive in the beginning. So they always start with emotional and verbal abuse, and they will always escalate in terms of the frequency and the severity of the types of abuse. But not all relationships end up in physical abuse. So, that's something else that we really want to impress upon teens, is that it doesn't have to be physical. There's lots of other different ways that you can be abused in a relationship. Now, I gave the statistics earlier. We know that boys are getting abused as well, so we know that anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. It doesn't matter your age, your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your gender identity, your socioeconomic level, your level of education. Anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. But what we do know, both nationally and in New Jersey, the rate of males abusing females is about 85% of the cases. So if I sometimes refer to a victim as a she and an abuser as a he, it is just because of what the statistics show. It doesn't mean that it can't happen both ways. So let's talk a little bit about the community of LGBTQ+ teens. So in a study of gay, lesbian, and bisexual adolescents, youth involved in same-sex dating have had a higher rate of dating violence than youth involved in opposite-sex dating. Why that is, I'm not sure, but we do know that there are a little bit different dynamics when it comes to this population. For example, one of the things that might be a manipulative tactic is that the partner might threaten to out their partner if they were to say disclose that there's abuse going on, or to break up with them. And there's different ways that their partners can abuse them using their gender identity or sexual orientation. So we do know it's happening in this community. We are trying to educate people how to deal with this situation and react appropriately, and also especially law enforcement, and to kind of leave our biases at the table and learn about this population so that we know how to deal with it. We know that this community of youth are at a higher risk for physical, emotional, and technological abuse, and that transgender teens report the highest rates of physical abuse at about 88%, which is really scary and concerning. So we obviously have to, educate ourselves about what is going on in this population specifically, if you have a family that's dealing with this issue. So I mentioned there are a bunch of different types of abuse. The types of abuse we'll go over briefly are emotional, verbal, technological, sexual, financial to a lesser extent among teens, and physical abuse. So with emotional abuse, I want you to think back to maybe your first relationship that you had as a teenager, and think about how you felt when you had somebody that you were interested in is interested back, right? And how, everything, every compliment, everything that was flattering, really made you feel so good about yourself. And, that's kind of what we call the love bombing, where you're in a relationship and it's really, your partner is idolizing you and saying all these wonderful things. And they're things that we want to hear generally. And so this is that emotional get that gets you into that relationship. And it might be situations where they're asking for commitment very soon into a relationship, or expressing feelings of deep love very early in a relationship. We always try to impress upon teens that healthy relationships follow a healthy path. It takes a while to develop feelings of love and get to know each other. So if it's too much too soon, if it seems like it's too good to be true, it usually is. Because what happens once you are sucked into that relationship, and now maybe you're saying, I love you, even though you're not really sure if your feelings are at that point yet. Now you're invested in that relationship. Now you've held yourself out as a couple. And now is when those feelings of jealousy and possessiveness come in, that your partner all of a sudden wants to spend all their time with you. They don't want you to hang out with your friends, or your family. They want to spend all their time with you. So that's a pretty big red flag very early on in a relationship. For teens, is if you have activities that you like to do and now your partner is keeping you from doing those activities, or everything has to be what your partner wants you to do and they don't want you doing anything that they want to do, and everything is used under the guise of, it's only because I love you. I don't want you to wear that, because I think that you're sending the wrong message, and there guys in the school are looking at you a certain way. I'm just looking out for you. It's only because I love you I'm telling you I don't think you should wear that, or I don't think you should wear that much makeup, or I don't think you should hang out with your friends because I think that they're a bad influence on you, or I don't think they have your best interests at heart. So it's all of that types of attitudes that start to isolate you from your family and friends. And isolation is really the number one barrier to victims, leaving an abusive relationship. So it's confusing for adults, but it's really especially confusing for teens, where they're being told what to do, what to wear, but they're told it's all because I love you, or maybe their partner is very confusing in their behaviors. Like one minute they're kind and loving, the next minute they're being nasty, the next minute they're back to being loving, the next minute they're ghosting them. It's always kind of keeping them guessing. And it's kind of stereotypical to say, but we know, if you think back to your teen years, didn't we all kind of thrive a little bit on the drama, on like, they get together, they break up, who's friends with who's fighting with who. It's a lot of things that teens are navigating as they kind of are making their way through these social issues. Threats to commit suicide, that's another huge red flag. If a person is in a relationship and their partner threatens to commit suicide, unfortunately, what we know is that what they're really saying is, I'm going to kill you and then I'm going to kill myself. Or they're just using it as a manipulative tactic to keep somebody in a relationship. Imagine being a teenager when your partner says, if you break up with me, I'll kill myself. I can't live without you. Imagine the guilt and the pressure that puts on that partner to stay in that relationship. And, where their love is involved, oh, I'm the only person who can help him or her. I'm the only person who understands them. I'm the only person who is there for them. So that's a really huge manipulation on the part of abusers, and everything. There's so many things that fall into that category of gaslighting, where they're basically blame everything on their partner for everything in the relationship. And they're trying to kind of make them think that they're going crazy. They might say, oh, I never said that. You misheard me, or I didn't mean it that way. Or, oh, you take it, I was just joking. You take things too seriously. You're too serious. You can't take a joke, to the point where the victim thinks that they're really the ones that are to blame in their relationship. So it could be doing things like keeping the victim from doing activities that they like to do because of that jealousy and possessiveness, controlling their behaviors, controlling their gender expression, constant monitoring their whereabouts, which we're going to talk about. So like I said, emotional abuse and verbal abuse kind of go hand in hand. So when it comes to verbal abuse, it's threats. It could be threats to out them, threats to harm them, threats to harm their friends, their family, their pets. It can be constant yelling, criticism, screaming at them, calling them terrible names, giving them the silent treatment, telling humiliating jokes about them in front of their friends, threatening to out them, I think I mentioned, but also misgendering or dead naming. So misgendering is when a person wants to be referred to by particular pronouns and their partner consistently refers to them by their old pronouns, or they want to be known by a new name and their partner consistently referring to them by their old name. Those are forms of abuse. And again, they're telling you how to act, what to do, what to say, what to wear, are all forms of verbal abuse. Technological abuse, we know that all of the things that I talked about with emotional abuse and verbal abuse can also happen with technology. A lot of harassment happens over the phones, right? We're all addicted to our phones, especially teenagers. And so they use that as a way to constantly harass their partner. So it could be constant calling them, being upset if their partner doesn't take their calls right away, even if they're in class, demanding that they keep their phone on at all times, even during class or during, sports practice or at their after school job. It can be sending constant harassing text messages, harassing them through social media. It could have been that they opened up a fake social media account and are posting things purporting to be their partner when it's really the abuser. Using social media to keep tabs on their partner. That's a form of abuse. So what do we know a lot of teens do as soon as they get to a location is they take a selfie and then tag their location. So they make it very easy if their partner wants to get to them at all times, no matter where they are. Teenagers unfortunately make it really easy for them. And when we go out and talk to teens, we talk about some of these things. For example, we talk to them about different GPS locators. For example, when my son was in middle school, we got Life 360 on his phone and my husband's phone and my phone. because he was going to start walking home from school. So this way we knew, how he was walking home when he got home. And a lot of teenagers use that app. So they use it not just with their family, but they have a group of friends and they all know where everybody is at any given time of the day or night, which is all well and good, except if there's a couple that's in that friend group and now they've broken up, they don't bother to get rid of the Life 360. Now their partner can know everywhere they are and use that as a way to harass them. Like, oh, I saw you were over at, John's house tonight. What's going on with John? Like, what are you doing there? Oh, you told me we were going to be here, but I saw that you were someplace else. So using that as a way to monitor. If you ever see kids, they pass around their phones like it's nothing. So they all have all of the passcodes to their friends' phones, passcodes to their social media. Again, that's all well and good until there's a breakup, and now they can use that information against them. So it can be, monitoring their social media. Like, who are you friends with on social media? Who are you what posts are you liking? And then calling them out on posts. Like, you're not allowed to follow that person on social media. And then, of course, we come to the issue of not just the tracking that they know of, but the non-consensual tracking by use of devices like Tile or the AirTag, which can be slipped in somebody's backpack very easily. And now you can be tracked without even knowing it for a while. So that's a huge issue we're seeing. And when we talk to teens about this issue, like the Life 360 app, they are adamant that they do not want to get rid of it. Even knowing the dangers, they are adamant that they don't want to get rid of it. So it's about education, but, unfortunately, teens are going to be teens and they're going to make these decisions for themselves, but we do have to educate them about the risks. And then there are the explicit images. So common scenario, let's say it's a boyfriend, girlfriend. During the consensual relationship, the girlfriend sends a bunch of explicit images to the boyfriend, which are usually at the boyfriend's request. They break up, and now he decides to send those images to half the school. That is devastating for that victim. So we see, I saw a ton of these types of cases when I supervised our juvenile unit, most of them during middle school, because we know that the average age that a person gets a cell phone now is 10 years old. So that's a lot of responsibility to give a 10-year-old, is having that cell phone. So, the sexting is a big issue. Revenge porn, which is the example I gave you, sextortion. If you break up with me, I will send these images. Those are all forms of technological abuse. Sexual abuse, it includes, forcible rape, but it also includes that constant pressure to have sex. If your partner as a teenager is threatening to break up with you if you don't engage in certain sexual acts, that is a form of sexual abuse. They're using it as a manipulation to keep you in that relationship and making you feel bad if you have a different choice than they do. It can be things like, not refusing to take part in safe sex practices. It can be refusing to, can be failing to disclose an HIV status. Those are all forms of sexual abuse, as well as filming. That's a big question that we get a lot with students now is, that they're seeing examples of where they're taking part in consensual sexual acts, and their partner, unbeknownst to them, films them, and now has that video and uses that as another mechanism to abuse the victim, to threaten them if they leave them or break up. So that's another huge issue. So we really have to educate teens about the dangers of, having these images, sending these images, videotaping, not videotaping, that just showed my age, but recording sexual acts. That is a huge form of sexual abuse. And finally, physical abuse, and again, I talk about physical abuse last because it is usually the last step that takes place in a relationship. And again, not all relationships become physically abusive, But physical abuse includes all the things that we normally think of, like the hitting, the kicking, the punching, the shoving, grabbing, strangulation. Strangulation is a huge red flag, and it's really dangerous to victims. But it can also be things like destroying property, and it's always the victim's property. It's not their own phone that they throw across the room. It's the victim's phone. It can be damaging property that's really sentimental or meaningful to the victim. It could be harming pets. It could be preventing you from leaving a room or leaving the car. Most forms of physical abuse take place in a victim's vehicle, or in the victim's bedroom, because that's the place that teenagers have the most privacy. It can be driving recklessly. We see this a lot with teens because, again, a lot of the physical abuse takes place in vehicles because of the privacy issue. So, those are all forms of physical abuse in addition to what we normally think of. So why don't victims just leave? Especially teenagers. There's a myth that if a victim leaves an abusive relationship, that everything is fine. What we know is that when leaving is the most dangerous time for victims, and I'm talking about whether you're a teenager or an adult, leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time. So we really have to make sure that if a teenager is going to break up and leave an abusive relationship, we want to make sure that they know how to leave safely. The other thing we never want to ask is, why don't you just leave? Because that's a victim blaming question. That puts the blame on the victim instead of the abuser. So we want to ask the question differently. We want to ask the victim, what is preventing you from leaving? Because that's where we're going to get to the real issue of what obstacles the victims think that they're facing, that we can help work through that with them. So what does prevent a victim from leaving? Well, it can be a lot of things. It could be, I kind of put them into two categories. It's fear and love. So there's love for their partner. They think that they're just in love with somebody who's really troubled, and that they're the only person who can help them, and that they have to try to, help them change because their partner has promised that they'll change. And we always want to give people a second chance or forgive them. Especially women, we are sort of brought up as caregivers, right? We take care of everybody around us first. And that's kind of what teen girls are learning as well. So it's that love and devotion to their partner, but also fear. So it could be fear of harm. It could be fear of being outed. It can be fear that nobody will believe them. It can be fear that, they're going to be isolated from their friend group because everybody was used to them being a couple. It can be fear that, if I tell my parents, they're never going to let me date again. They're going to tell me I can't date until I'm 30 years old. It can be fear that people are going to blame them. Like, how did you get yourself into this situation? It could be fear of getting in trouble, especially if drugs or alcohol are involved in a situation. And it can be fear of their partner exposing these intimate images. So, all of these things are reasons that victims may not leave. Self-doubt, this is when you have been so diminished by your partner through the use of this power and control, where you start to doubt your ability to make decisions or, trust your instincts. There's a really good book I'm just going to recommend right now. It's called The Gift of Fear. And it's about how we all have sort of that instinct, that gut feeling, and that we need to listen to that gut feeling. When something's not right, we have to listen to our gut telling us that that's not right. And he has a really good chapter in the book about domestic violence, about stalking. But basically the premise, and I always recommend it to women, because women, as generally, we sort of make excuses, or we don't listen to our gut feeling because we don't want to hurt somebody's feeling or insult somebody. So it's a pretty good read, and I do recommend it. But, there could be cultural reasons, that this is just an accepted sort of dating practice within the culture. And it could be fear of what the parents' reactions will be, or overreactions. So warning signs that a teen may be a victim of abuse in their relationship is, they're making light of the jealousy and possessiveness. Well, I want to spend all my time with him too. It's not just him. Or, making excuses for why they're not doing their normal activities. They have a change in their disposition or attitude. So for example, they don't want you to change plans at the last minute, because then they know that they have to tell their partner, and they have to, cancel plans with them or make changes. They might, start coming in late when normally they were always on time with their curfew. You notice that the couple, when you see them together, they seem to fight more than they get along, or you see the teen being more upset than they are happy in their relationship. I could tell you so many news stories that we have of teen victims being killed by their partner. And when they interview the family and friends later, they always describe the relationship as rocky or as on and off. That constant, we're together, we're breaking up, we're together, we're breaking up. And I'm not saying that every case like that may involve abuse, but it's definitely worth taking a second look and figuring out what is really going on in this relationship. If you see the teen, having drastic changes in the way that they dress or the way they socialize. So for example, they would always, dress up for school and wear like really trendy clothes, or maybe some form-fitting clothes, or always have their hair and makeup done, and all of a sudden they start dressing in baggy clothes and not wearing makeup. That's a drastic change that might be due to their partner demanding that they dress in a certain way. Maybe they are losing weight or gaining weight to appease their partner's whims and wishes. You see that they're not hanging out with their friends as much, or maybe they were part of a sports team and they decided not to go out for that sport again, or they decided to quit the team. And that's all because their partner is monopolizing all of their attention. Seeing bruises definitely would be a red flag, bruises that they can't explain. Unfortunately, most abusers are pretty skilled at not leaving bruises or marks where people could see them. But definitely, if there are unexplained bruises or marks, definitely want to pay attention to that, especially if there are any marks on somebody's neck. Because again, strangulation is really life-threatening. And we know that victims who are strangled by their partners, even one time during the course of a relationship, are 750% more likely to be killed by that partner. And this is not unique just to adult abusers. We see a lot of teens or young adults being strangled. One famous case that was pretty recent was Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. They were in their early 20s when it happened. But if you remember this case, it was maybe 2 summers ago. They were traveling cross country in a van and they were documenting their journey. And she ended up missing. When he came back to Florida home, she wasn't with him. And it turned out that he had strangled her to death. And then he left and went and killed himself. But they started dating in their teens. And so we know that strangulation does happen in teens and young adults, not just adult cases. Their schoolwork might deteriorate or attendance decline. So again, they're not spending their time on their schoolwork. They're spending time with their partner in accordance with the partner's wishes. Or maybe they're afraid to go to school because they're afraid of facing the abuser, or have broken up with the abuser and now they're being isolated by their friends at school. They stopped participating in activities outside of school that they enjoyed, all to appease their partner. Stopped spending time with family and friends, and only doing what their partner wants to do. And it's all the time. We all make compromises in relationships, right? Like I get to watch this show, then we'll watch your show. I mean, that's normal and healthy to compromise in a relationship, but it's not normal and healthy when one person has all the power and control and demands that their partner does everything that they want to do. it's minimizing their partner's goals and dreams and the activities that they like to do. And it's all forms of this power and control. So what can we do as caregivers, as parents, as guardians, as helpers in the community? What we want to do, for one thing, never, ever try to mediate between a couple. When there's abuse in a relationship, mediation is not the way to go. You can't talk to them at the same time. You want to just talk to the teen who's being abused, and you want to be very sort of open-ended with your questions, and avoid sort of doing the victim blaming thing where you're asking like, well, what did you do to provoke this? Or why do you do these behaviors when that makes them angry? We don't want to do any victim blaming, but we also don't want to completely talk bad about their partner, because they could still be in the relationship. Most victims want the violence to end. They want the abuse to end, but they may not want the relationship to end. So we don't want to alienate them by saying things like, oh, I hate them, or, I never liked them, or I knew you never should have dated them, because you want to make sure that we are listening and avoiding those types of like questions like, how did you end up like this? Like, how did you let this go on so long? Why didn't you come to me sooner? We want to avoid rescuing them. We want to empower them to make their own decisions, because as a victim of domestic abuse, all their power and control has been taken away from them by their partner. And so we want to make sure that we empower them to make decisions, that it's their choice. So unfortunately, if their choice is to stay in a relationship, you want to make sure that they stay safely. If they want to leave a relationship, we want to make sure that they leave safely. So we always want to come to them from a place of concern. We want to confront them about specific behaviors that we see. Like I wasn't listening, but I couldn't help but overhearing, the way he spoke to you, or the names he was calling you, that's verbally abusive. Do you understand that? Does this go on all the time? And we want to talk to kids about what a healthy relationship looks like. We want to talk to them about, what is normal in a healthy relationship. We want to talk to them about their rights and responsibilities as in a dating relationship. For example, that, you have the right to go out with your friends. You have the right to spend time with your family. You have the right to have your own opinions about things. You have the right to change your mind about things. You have the right to post things on social media that you want to post. You have the right to break up with somebody if you're not happy, or if you think that you're being abused in a relationship. You have the responsibility not to pressure anybody to have sex. You have the responsibility not to post intimate images after a breakup. You have the responsibility to work out your problems in a peaceful and respectful way. These are the types of things that we should talk to kids about, that, what a healthy relationship looks like, both as, both boys and girls, what it looks like to be respectful, what it looks like to how to accept a breakup. We need to teach, especially girls, that no is a complete sentence. It's not no, but it's not no, I'm going to explain my answer. Sometimes the answer is just no. And other people should respect that. So we have to teach, we have to listen to our kids. We're just as guilty of it as kids are, right? We have to take our phones, we have to turn them off, put them away, and really listen. We always had a rule, an unspoken rule in my house. When my son was a teenager, and he's still a teenager, he's 18, but it was whenever he felt like talking about something, we knew that something was on his mind, so we would literally drop everything. You could be in the middle of the greatest show, middle of dinner, about to walk out the door, whatever it was, we dropped everything, because that your time with them is so limited, right? That When they want to talk, it's something that's really bothering them. So we have to take the time to listen and tell them, there's nothing that we can't handle together. Like anything that's come up, we will handle it together. There's nothing that's going to make me love you any less or think bad things about you. We can handle anything, because what we unfortunately have to realize is that teen suicide has emerged as the second leading cause of death for children ages 10 to 19. So we really have to pay attention. We have to know what they're consuming, not just, making sure they're eating their vegetables. We have to make sure we know what music they're listening to. What are the lyrics to those songs? What are they watching on TV? Unfortunately, a lot of what they're watching is so much more provocative than things that I watched as a teenager. They're watching shows like Euphoria or Ginny and Georgia, which talk about issues like domestic violence, substance abuse, suicide, self-harm behaviors. We have to know this so that we can open up a conversation with our teens and talk to them. Also, we have to recognize that pornography is much more readily available now than it ever was when, for example, when I was a teenager. So they are having access to things that, of course, don't depict reality. They are highly edited. There's no conversations about consent or safe sex practices when it comes to pornography, but we have to talk to them about these issues. Like if we don't, who's going to, right? So again, we want to talk. We want to know, what they're watching. We want to gather information about resources so that we could give those resources to kids. We want to let them know that we love them and are concerned. We don't want to threaten things like, oh, I'm going to kill him, because they're worried now about you doing something and getting yourself in trouble. So we don't want to have those types of strong reactions. We want to talk to them. We want to model good behavior. So, for example, if you have an argument with your partner, your spouse, or whatever, and the children are present for that, you want to talk to the teens about, look, arguing is a normal part of being in a relationship. Or if you said something during the course of a fight and it was wrong to say, acknowledge that to your teen and say, you know what? Your father and I had an argument. I said some things I shouldn't have said. I apologized. I take accountability for that. That was wrong of me. Take responsibility and accept it. And anytime we're talking to a teen who's in an abusive relationship, we want to talk to them about safety planning. We want to say, for example, set a code word with friends or family that will indicate to those people that you need help. So we talked to one student who came up with the code of tutoring. So when her ex-boyfriend came to the school and tried to get her to come into his car, she said, no, I got to call my dad. Otherwise he's going to worry. And she called her dad and said, Dad, I have to stay after school for tutoring. That was the code that he knew then that she was in trouble and he needed to get to the school or call the police. Codes words can save lives. Identify escape routes. If you see that a fight is escalating or something's coming on, going places with friends, always traveling in a group, having somebody screen your phone calls, making sure you have your cell phone with you at all times. So for example, if you are in a car with your partner and they decide they're going to drop you off at the side of the highway at 2:00 in the morning, who can you call to come pick you up? Make sure that you have that person's number in your cell phone. Kind of do some role playing, whether it be with a family member or a friend, of how to do a breakup, rehearse lines, make sure that you know how to keep the conversation short. Again, no is a complete sentence. Never meet with a partner, especially for a breakup, in a private place. Always meet in a public, crowded place. Meeting in somebody's vehicle is private. Nobody's paying attention to what's going on in your car, even if you're parked in the middle of like a Walmart park shopping center. Travel, take different routes. Don't take the same route to work or to school. Don't walk the dog at the same time at night, because if somebody's trying to track you or stalk you, they will know your routines. And be aware that breaking up can be a dangerous time, and make sure that you are making up safety plans to keep yourself safe. And there's a lot of resources out there to help you. For one, there's Second Floor Helpline. That's a helpline for teens. It's not just for teens in an abusive relationship, it's for all teen issues, including dating abuse. There's the Domestic Violence 24-hour hotline. There's a national hotline. There is a statewide hotline, and there are local hotlines where teens can call. It's completely confidential. A parent can call. If you're working with a teen and concerned about their safety, say, you know what, why don't we call together? Let's call this hotline together and get information about safety planning. There are lead domestic violence agencies. There's a lead domestic violence agency in every county in New Jersey. You should become familiar with those services are, including shelter, court advocates, counseling for kids and adults and teens. And you can find out the lead domestic violence agency in your county by going on the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence website. And you can click Get Help, Guide to Services, and they will tell you what the lead domestic violence agency is in your county. So for Morris County, it's JBWS. And for Sussex County, it's DASI, which stands for Domestic Abuse, Sexual Assault Intervention Services. So those are great resources, not only for information, but also help and counseling. Futures Without Violence. There's the New York City Anti-Violence Project, which is for support for LGBTQ plus victims of intimate partner violence. Hudson Pride provides support for LGBTQ youth. There's a couple others I want to give you. There's a Partnership for Change. So go on our website, and there is, if you go on our website into our Power Back program, there's a section for adults, and at the very bottom of that screen for adults, there's a sample safety plan for teens. There's also a section for students under our Power Back program, and that actually has a Power Back handbook, which is a great resource. You can print out the handbook. You could give it out to people. You could give it out to any teens that you have in your lives. And it kind of talks about pretty much everything we talked about today, plus more. You know, talk to them about healthy relationships. How do you talk to kids? You know, what different types of abuse look like. So it gives a lot of great information. So definitely check out our website, go on that. There's also, I'll give you Safe and Sound Somerset is the lead domestic violence agency in Somerset County, and they have great resources on their website as well. They have a podcast, Ask Ava, which deals with a lot of teen dating abuse issues. So that's also a great resource. Love is Respect is another website you can go on, and it actually will give quizzes. So this is not a bad idea to sit down and do with teens and go over a quiz like about, you know, is this a healthy behavior or an unhealthy behavior? Is this abuse or not abuse? And it gives quizzes to teens to figure out, you know, how to navigate their new dating life. So I think, you know, we obviously want to talk to our kids all the time about these issues. We want to take these problems seriously. Don't make light of it. Again, this is the most important thing that is going on in their lives. And, you know, we want to obviously show love, patience, understanding, in helping teens navigate this really challenging time. You know, it's confusing being a teenager. So I gave you, we are on Facebook, our a Partnership for Change. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And our Power Back program, we have Instagram and we have TikTok, because here's what we know. Teens get all of their information from TikTok. So we are on TikTok. You can follow us. And I think I will stop at this point, turn it over to Patricia. And if there's any questions I can address.
Susan, thank you very much. I'm very impressed with that presentation because you really cover very important points in relation to dating and also abuse and also resources that people can utilize. So from the bottom of my heart, definitely thank you very much for bringing that information to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I gave you a lot of information and I kind of tried to go through it quickly because this could be a 2 or 3 hour presentation. I know you only have an hour for your Lunch and Learn series, which is great, but at least to get some of that information out there, I think is really, really valuable for anybody working with families.
I'm sure all those caregivers probably watching this video, they're gonna thank you in the future for all that information that you are giving to us. So thank you very much. With that, we are gonna move on to our Q&A session. That part is not recorded. So thank you very much.